delighted that for the launch of David's second pamphlet with us, Dempsey and Windle, he's joined tonight by two other fine Scots poets, Jock Stein and Len Penny. And thanks to the generosity of tonight's performers, this launch is in support of Scottish Women's Aid, as well as Cramond commemorates for the planting of trees in Cramond in memory of all that's been lost to COVID. Our running order tonight will be Jock, who's been playing the bagpipes for us, then Len, and finally David, followed by a Q&A session to any of our poets. If you'd like to think about it as we go along, perhaps you might think of some things you want to ask them. We'll wrap up the event by 8:30, but we may leave the Zoom link open for a few minutes for informal chat after the close. So we're going to start with Jock. Jock Stein lives in Haddington in East Lothian. He's a man of many talents, a poet, a piper and preacher. He's also a doctor of poetry and editor of the Handset Press. So Jock, would you like to unmute yourself? And we're looking forward to hearing your reading.
Hey, Janice, thanks very much for the introduction.
It is.
David, you know, it's just a word to you at the beginning, because there are some poets that use words to make you think. There are some poets that use words primarily to make you feel, but David, you managed to do both. And according to David, folks, and I'm going to cite one of the poems in this collection that we're celebrating tonight. According to him, we are clouds in borrowed trousers. If that doesn't make you feel and think, I don't know what does. So actually, both David and I suspect, rather like kilts, but although I'm wearing a kilt tonight, David, I can't see what you're wearing, but it's probably not a kilt. But anyway, never mind that. I've got two of David's poems to read to you. It's from this booklet, Gathering Light, and the first is called Elusive Edges. At low tide, one can cross a causeway to the island, not an island. Leaving aside tides and tables, to isolate, lose and forget oneself, to walk on the waters where the line between sand and sea is fudged, where the line between sea and sky is fuddled. We always had a liquid borderline, Romans from the south, Picts to the north, a powerful empire and those wild tribes. The tide rises and falls, falls and rises. We remain, not knowing if we live in a village or a city, an island or a peninsula. These tattooed strangers, are they natives or tourists, Picts or Italians? We don't know. We live beside the river, in the dirty mouth of the estuary, in country or city, in village or suburb. Are we in Cramond or Edinburgh? Edinburgh or Scotland? Scotland or Britain? We don't know. Britain or Europe? And I feel this uncertainty on the muddy margin between past and future, between ourselves and others, this border between you and me, my enemy, my lover. And if one were able to breach the border, if I could have crossed that marshy membrane between head and heart, my mind would have followed the cloudy currents of my soul. And the second poem is called Unoaked. When I was warden of Carberry Tower, my hobby was to identify every single one of the trees in the estate. So I'm always glad of a tree poem. Unoaked, it has an epigraph. Come away from the window, come for tea. They took our oak down, comfort me. Innocent of ill intent, Our great oak shaded Mrs. Rankin's renowned refreshment rooms, where peak-capped boys watched carriages from Barnton Station take Sunday outings to Cramen Beach, posted us piles of leaf mail every autumn, lodged Nordic waxwings through that winter. You remember the waxwings? I saw a white squirrel in the snow that winter. You believe me? At the window, car doors slam for school. I watch the saplings, wondering what trace is left by shadow of oak leaves on a tea room's sandstone wall in an Edwardian postcard. How do the branches sway in an unrecorded breeze? Why are those ragged boys leaning over the wall? Stamped and postmarked 1905. The tree was all we still could touch. And now that it is gone, there will be an acorn nursery. There will be an Oak View nursing home. With time, with reckless negligence, a tree is capable of crime, whipping the windows on the upper deck, working the wind to crunch a car and break a limb. A tree is capable of manslaughter. The council's law is arm for arm, and our oak now joins half its height, an olden grove of beggar stumps, fit only for a dog to lift a leg, unlimbed, unleaving, and unbowed. Now I'm going to read a few of my own poems. First of all, two poems about water edges. One from Wales, the Diffy Estuary Ampersand. Now you see it, now you don't. But now's the time the river takes a breath, its energy passed out to sea, Welsh dragon fire extinguished at low tide. Here, sandbanks rise, unfurl their necks with golden curls, to make an ampersand that calls each riverbank to raise a hand and greet the other. Sand formations mirror clouds which lift and drift, bind earth and sky, remind us that a high tide cannot shift the low behind, each ampersand a healthy strand of DNA. What is submerged when life is in full flow will rise when dry times come and ask, and so? And then a poem called Space on the Beach. A hollow shell, jauntily curled into a beret on a balding brow of white and brown. A holed spacecraft, vulnerable to atmosphere, a landed, sanded piece of ocean debris. My fingers touch and feel their way across the contours, gently mountaineering over ribs which cut genetic space across the spiral. Hold it, turn it over. See that empty silver spiral tuck itself away and make a horn to funnel sea sound round and round, summoning my wailing ears like fingers pressing, beckoning me to listen, journey to the stars, swim into orbit on a sea of color, bold, unfolded from this fragile conch, like Venus riding into space. Those two estuary poems are from my booklet, Swift, which is referenced, I think, in the chat. And now, two poems which are located in our own estuary, the fourth estuary. This poem is set in Port Seton, actually, where the artist John Bellamy was brought up. One of his famous paintings features his grandmother, The pipe band I now play with is based in Kirkensey and Port Seton, and recently I was asked to take the funeral of the band secretary's father, who was a joiner. One of his tools, which he showed me, was called a granny tooth router. It has a very narrow blade used for cutting a narrow groove. And so this poem is called A Granny's Tooth. I thought of the old lady on the Bellany canvas as I cradled the router in my palm, felt it stroke the warm wood, steel on skin, as hard and soft as a cat's paw. Tooth. The tooth was ancient, firm as the hills across the Forth, full of the old wisdom. The tooth had eyes for the fashions of oak, the curves of rosewood, the marks of mahogany. The tooth, sharp set for the groove, a blade as fierce as her memory of water crashing on the boat shore, where the men did not come back. And to finish with, a slightly less poignant poem, perhaps, which is located quite near Cramond, and it's called Inchcombe. Join the cacophony of gulls, teenagers, plumage whitening round the neck, dressing for the dance their elders choreograph 1,000,000 times, until they drop and join the litter which infests this trampled island. Ride the humming wave of tourists, breaking in multicolored foam with a flotilla of footwear, thin to bear this weight of curiosity, dark and light-skinned, with a titter of tongues to probe this listening island. See through the raggle of stiles, roofs rough-stoned and stepped, a peppering of plaques among the ruins, an iron ship with sails set for the wind above the chapter house, a glitter of sun to fleck this somber island. And then a genesis of quiet, an exodus of tourists, a Leviticus of simple ritual, numbers of unseen guests, a Deuteronomy of something rediscovered, this Pentateuch of earth and angels, with somewhere a memory of holiness. Now I'll leave myself unmuted and go and play a couple of tunes. David, are you going to introduce?
I'll do a sort of a link spiel.
Okay, tell them what the tunes are.
Yes, so Jock is going to play a couple of tunes. The Slow Air, The Dark Island, which is one of my favorites. It's perhaps because it's one of the few ones I know, but it's a lovely sort of haunting melody. And then he's going to play a reel called The Kilt Is My Delight, which sounds, can't say I know it, but it sounds fun. And for these purposes, once Jock is ready, he's going to emerge from the kitchen, and we'll get the sort of full-on enjoyment of the piping. Whilst Jock is getting ready, I'll also just mention that Jock is somebody I've got to know through poetry. He's a member of one of my poetry groups. And I'll also take the opportunity to say that with us tonight, there are members of 3 of my poetry groups, and plus Juliet's cat, who I suppose counts as an honorary member. So thank you so much all for coming along. And poetry is often seen as being a sort of an individual pursuit, you know, the poet in their garret. But nowadays, the poet in their garret is involved in a Zoom workshop with other poets in their garrets, and is probably workshopping their poem, and is being told, you know, you need to lose that line, it's not adding anything, or, you know, you don't need that final stanza, the poem is already finished after stanza 3, and all this kind of thing. For me, poetry has been very much a collective exercise, and it's thanks to the support of many of the people who are here in the Zoom room tonight, and many others as well. So very, very much appreciated. Jock is a stalwart of the Edinburgh Stanza Group of the Poetry Society.
Len Penny is a Scots poet and Scots language and mental health advocate. She's best known for her Scots word of the day on Twitter, and she's widely followed on Twitter and TikTok. Alongside what is already an illustrious poetry career, Len is also a final year student of Spanish language and literature at the University of St Andrews. She's in the middle of exams at the moment, so we're especially grateful to her for giving her time up tonight to support David's launch. Len, thank you so much. We'd love to hear from you now.
No worries. I'm going to start with my favourite poem from David. As soon as I heard this one, I knew it was going to be one of my all-time favourite poems, just because it's often that I read poems that I don't understand, but it's not often that I read poems that I don't understand and want to understand. And I sat with this and tried my absolute hardest to figure it out, because it's just, oh, it's amazing. I love it. Anyway, I've rambled on. It's The Traveller's Tale, and I'm going to try my absolute hardest to say it, because it is extremely difficult for me to get my mind around, but here we go. Dreg your tochas brede lochen, skreeg the rug the mammalochen, then, gepocht and gemazeld with schmuts and with small, Scots Yiddish or mishmash is what ye hae got. Misguggled, gemished wi achs and wi ochs, a crowdy smeared bannock and hamisher locks. Nu, sup your drac dossich and hae a good nosh. Listen wheel to my mishe and dinna ye fash. A silky strew's got telt me this in Lumfinnins. Gefilte fish drook it and she met and drinnen. David was a trebler chiel, a mensch on boychick naish meal. A litvak hadna been to school, but Davin dat reb dichie school. And ony plaishe Sunday night, at Jewish lit would share new licht. David I took the stopping train, hoaching wi all the trebling men. He'd schlepp for miles to scrap twa shilling, and on the train wad lay to fillin. He schlepped his schmata all through Fife, weel kent by mony a lanely wife, whar yid and peckle work and speckle, and ilka fife and tune and stettel, and hocht and ploch, he'd appen ston, aye yammering for the promised lawn. David was froom and kept the faith, for all the swicts and shiskas safe, until on glitch do not some ferrum, a gallus henwife meant in harem, called David Ben, gied him a brew, wha made poor David off a foo, for shonskirt, for toots, and all the out the gem, one hutspadik and wene sham, she stelt his gear and wouldna pay, his peckle tomb set on his way. David got aff at Embra toon, the nicht was dreich David doen, and dreared mine geld, ach bin verloren, verfen the day dros ich geboren. Ach, are ye weel, a neighbour speerd, oi wees mer, ich hob ein gay seer heed. Nu, David and his lead are lang syne gain, alang wi Jacob's greenbaum, everk il ein. And since Scots Yiddish had nae gaunts and macker, some cried of pisher bardy, others alter cacker. I just think it's amazing. Every time I see it, it's just, oh, I think it's great. And the next one I'm going to do is another one by David called Why Do I Screeve in Scots? And I think it's just a great look at Scots from a sort of perspective of a learnable language. I grew up speaking it, so whenever I write in it, it feels, natural and normal for me to be doing that. And I've never stopped to consider how amazing it must feel to write in Scots. It just, you know, it's like when you live in a place and you don't realise how beautiful it is, and then people go and tell you because they're seeing it for the first time, and it made me see Scots in a whole new light. So this is why they escribe in Scots. Maybe this smar that after 40 year mon thurl this tuch old Ashkenazi skin, the empires of the Habsburgs and the Tsars by way of Africa. Aiblins that this year promised lawn where ye come hame is where I choose to stay. The worlds will wander to a mouth wherever macker ston and blether. That, gin its eye a yard fast lead, ilkane appropriated by the dreich mon sucket to your cultures, each to each. That o my ethel spak 3 languages in ane, that poesia macaranashi seeps in, and out of me like Welshmerts. So, maybe why I scribe in Scots is why I write it all. I think that's great. And now I'm going to do February flashback. We're a wee bit out of February, but not that out of February. When earth has drained its fill, and rain, rebuffed, clings to the craggy furrows of the brae, when half the road's a pool that swamps the leaf crog's stank. Pert potholes cup the murky slosh, wink saucily at lorries gushing by, waking the weary bus queue in their drench. Winter's wet set eyes lash up and catch unlooked for shafts of Scotland, braw and bricht. These fleeting breaches of the dreich, flaming the creamy underside of clouds, igniting flashy gulls to dance in the storm. And the last one I'm going to do by David is called Contact, and I think it's great. I've always thought about what aliens would say if they found us, and this is just a new perspective on it, so I just like it. If it comes, it won't be little green men, take me up to your leader, come up to my saucer sometime. If it ever comes, it won't be a conversation, you are breaking up, log off and try again. If it comes at all, it won't be your letter has just arrived, you forgot the stamp, the post is not what it was. It won't even come like a Christmas card comes to a friend who died 5 years ago. It might be a ring of stones, a setting sun at the equinox, asking a question. Is anyone still there? We were here when the light left, and we looked at the stars, just like you. I think that's great. And now I'm going to subject you to some of mine. This is called The Hurchin, and it's about a hedgehog. One day as I donnered through the tune of mine I dearly loo, I come across a spiky chiel. He was only passing through. The hurchin heased as we heed up, tear in his peery ee. It garred me greet to think of him as being fair to me. He didn't mean to make me jump o' beastie blithe and sclinner. He only meant to don a run in search of scran for dinner. But now I've got ye in my sicht, I'd like ye just to ken that beasties hae as much a richt to bide in tune as men. He tell't me times were muckle tough because, as Abdi kens, global warming isna good for spiky beastie friends, and hurchins ken this mair than maist as in the streets they bide. Can't turn the heating on or spend cold nights inside. We hurkled doon to hae ourselves a canty blithe wee blether. The hurchin speered at me about some politics and weather, how 8 days had left Cranruch and snaw aboon the street. He went skiting doon the pavement and could hardly find his feet. And so I pledged wi' every hing I hae aboon my soul that I would try to tak 10 of the hings I can control. The hurchin donnered on his way wi' a smile upon his face, content that he had done his part to save the human race. This next one's called A Body, and it's not nearly as cheery. What's a body today with the body they've got? When the person inside feels like somebody it's not, allowed to exist as, permitted to be, when an act of rebellion is saying, that's me, when the body you hae doesn't match what's inside, when society tells you you're something to hide. And the good women there, wi' a key in their horn, march ahint the locked gates, and so proudly they ston. If they just wished a while, they someday might learn there's mair to a lassie than what they discern. What's the point of a movement that's stuck stone and static? No can doon a glass ceiling and building an attic. What's a body today when the body's no theirs? When the people in power catch us unawares and impose their own laws that forbid us to choose what we do with the rights they instruct us to lose? They gied us delusions of hae and a voice, then scalp us for saying, my body, my choice. They canna be erst with bairns already there. They dinna care much about weans they didn't care. All they want is to keep lassies quiet and small and then thank them for letting us exist at all. What's a body to do with the body they've got? When for wanting to learn they get huckle and shot, and there's damn all today because the people that should fix the problems they caused have decided they would rather sit on their arses, pat their own backs. But the regime of power is showing its cracks, and if they aren't careful, we'll ask one day soon, what's a body today except burn this shite down? And the next one I wrote at Burns night because people were annoying me. They were, you know, like using Scots on one day of the year, and then every other day they were slagging it off. So I decided to take one of Burns's poems and mercilessly plagiarise it, but hope you forgive me for that. Fair fa your honest sonsy face, what hinks sae Scots is a disgrace, a lead that's meant for lesser hings, no there to learn, a lead well kent by mony folk that doesna hear 'em. A hint keyboards the wee troll hides, upon your soul the hatred bides, your words are naught but draps of rain agin my heed. Tax mair than dubs all filled with pish to drown me deed. We ken the rot your soul contains, one single lead in your brains. I look upon you filled with shame, but dinna fash. The Scots lead moans strive on in spite of all your smash. Then word for word Scots will nae dee, my time and tongue I can gie, and gie it all I will until my final breath. Our poems will be said by bairns lang past were death. Is there that troll wha sneers in shame, or cries me mony a hateful name, or seeks to cause me muckle pain for what I do, looks down with sneer and scorn for view on what I say? Poor deal, see him ower his screen, his grammar neat, his English clean, he fechts for country and for queen, but doesna see. If Abdi's gonna look his way, it isna me. But mark the chiels wha speak the lead, wha ken it's living never did, and ken it's fit for all the time, no special days, and sees the poor wee hypocrites on 25ths and Hogmanay's. Ye powers, wha are wi' me every hour, gie me smedum ye canna smoor. Old Scotland wants nae lingophobes wi' a hateful heed, but if you wish her grateful prayer, follow my lead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful music for the ears. I sort of got about a third of it, I guess, but I got the gist.
Yes.
It was lovely. I actually
Thank you.
used to live in Fife, but I was a small child. I was a young child. I was about 10, but I never actually learnt the lingo that well. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Mouth music.
Mouth music. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Now our next reader is the man himself.
Oh,
Yes, David. And we've known David now for a while because he came to us with his kilt, and we published that, and he's done fantastically well with that pamphlet. It's gone all over the place. It's gone to different parts of the world that we couldn't actually send it to as well. And we're very proud of David, actually. He writes out of Edinburgh, as I think most of you know, in English, Scots, Spanish, Yiddish, and a largely imagined dialect of Scots Yiddish, which you heard in the Trebbler's Tale. And that particular poem won him the Sangshaw Prize in 2020. In Gathering Light, his second pamphlet, he celebrates the Cramond Peninsula near his home in Edinburgh. And as we've said, profits from the sales will go to Cramond Commemorates, the tree planting project, which is supported by Cramond Primary and Cramond Kirk, whose locum minister, Reverend Ian Gilmore, who is here tonight, I've seen his name, has written a foreword to the poems. So we're very excited, David, to hear you reading from Gathering Light. Would you like to unmute now? And I will mute.
Thank you very much, Janice. Yes, so the show has been stolen, as I knew and really hoped it would be, by Jock and by Len. And isn't it wonderful to hear such different voices and to hear the Scots language being used in a very lively way. Although Jock, I think, was kind to those who haven't quite adjusted their lugs to the sound of Scots by going for his more English poems, I think, most in the main. But from Len we got the full shilling, and you know, it was almost as if you know, Burns was back with us, albeit in a modern form. So how enjoyable that was. And so I'm ever so grateful to Jock and to Len. And, you know, nothing is more enjoyable, I've learned, or I feel tonight certainly, for a poet than to hear your own poems being read by somebody else. And it makes you sort of feel, well, you know, maybe I'm not an imposter after all, because here's somebody actually reading my poem in a public event. I'd also like to thank Ian for his foreword and for his encouragement. The pamphlet would have been slightly different and perhaps with a much more obscure, pretentious title if Ian hadn't suggested to me that if I wanted to sell any of these in Cramond, I better have the word Cramond in the title. And Gathering Light was better than, I think I was going to call it Peninsularity, which might have appealed to about sort of one person here tonight. So Gathering Light, Cramond Causeway, and also to thank Stuart Richardson, who's here from Cramond Commemorates, and I'm so delighted to be supporting that project. Not that Cramond is particularly short of trees, actually, but it, you know, a few more won't do any harm. Now I'm going to read. Four poems. The first one is from Gathering Light. Then I'll read something from this Kilt of Many Colours. Then I'm going to read another couple of things which are entirely different. So I will read the title poem. I don't really need to show you this. It's behind Janice. I'll read the title poem from Gathering Light. Now, one of the strange things about winter in Scotland is that you do get some sunny days, and when you get a sunny day in the winter, the light can be blinding, and it can be, you know, quite annoying, but it can also be absolutely wonderful to be able to get light on the shortest day of the year at this latitude. And so this describes an experience on such a day in Cramond. And Cramond, of course, when you go down to the sea, you've got the light reflected off the sea as well, and it's just so light. Gathering Light. This was the day we went out to collect the light, took poles, fitted grippers, stepped onto the ice. Our first catch was a shiver, glinting off the river ripples, tickling the neck of the eider, flicking the edge of the shore. A mozzarella moon made a creamy face in the pines, and as the sun peered in, shimmered down to a see-through sliver. Soon we were slipping on sunlight that slid off the ice on the foreshore, bleaching the cotton ochels over the snowfields of Fife. When it came blinding over the estuary, sun skimming an unruffled sea, we gloved our eyes, blinked up, and the moon was away. This is the day we catch the dusk, lipstick kissing cloudy collars, twilight dapples in the gloaming, gilds this glass that warms the night. And the glass doesn't just warm the night, but it also lubricates the voiceless velar fricatives, which are shared by Scots and Yiddish. And I'm now going to read from Kilt of Many Colours, also available from a Dempsey and Windle near you. This is one that I don't read very often, but this is about the very start of the first lockdown, and it's about my last live event, which I think was on a Sunday, and it was at the synagogue in Edinburgh, where the wonderful Yiddish singer Sasha Lurie was leading a Yiddish song workshop, which I had the privilege to attend in the what's called the sukkah, which is the sort of tabernacle of the synagogue. And that was our last live event. And the very next day, everything else that they had planned to do in Edinburgh was cancelled. But owing to some very innovative people at the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities, or SCOJEC, within about a week, Sasha Lurie, who'd taken refuge in a village on the east coast of the East Nook of Fife, was zooming to about 300 people all over the world. And because this was so early in lockdown, this was a novelty, and hundreds of people were turning up at these events because there was nothing else they could do, and they were just so delighted to have any kind of human contact. So this starts very gloomily, but it ends on a more upbeat note. And it's not really in Yiddish, it's in what can be called Yinglish, which is English infected by Yiddish. And I'm going to read you the Yinglish and then the translation. Singing with Sasha in the sukkah for Sasha Lurie. Singing with Sasha in the shul in Sheens, singing in the sukkah. Mein Herz weint in mir, es ist mir nicht gut, ai, yabba, baba, boy. Singing with Sasha in the synagogue in Sheens, singing in the tabernacle. My heart weeps within me. I feel so wretched, ai, yabba, baba, boy. Es brennt, Schwesterle, unsere große Welt brennt. Oi, just last week you taught us a little, und euch spielen das Liedl kann mir nicht. Es ist mir nicht gut, oi, yabba, baba, boy. It's burning, little sister. Our big world's burning. Oi, just last week you taught us a song. Now there's no way to play it out. And I'm so wretched. Ai, yabba, baba, boy. Von deinen Städtler in East North Pfeifele, wirst zoomen schon this week zu mir und singst zu mir on consonants. Es ist mir schon gut, ai, yabba, baba, boy. From your little village in the East Nook of Fife, you'll zoom to me this week and sing to me on consonants. Already I feel better, ai, yabba, baba, boy. And a couple of little kind of things to say about, since my mum is here, the East Nook of Fife. When I told my mum that I'd been to this Zoom event and it had been zoomed from the East Nook of Fife, she said something on the lines of, and what is this East Nook of Fife? And from which I decided I could get East Nook Pfeifele as the Yiddish translation of the East Nook of Fife. And the other thing is about singing on the consonants. The most memorable thing that Sasha Lurie said to us was that in Yiddish song, Yiddish sings on the consonants, which is a very interesting concept because normally it would be the vowels that would be singing. But if one thinks about Scots as well as Yiddish, then these are languages which could be said to sing on the consonants. And the example I would give is there's a Scots word drich, which is very well known. Drich is miserable, and very drich is gaidrich. And if you think about gaidrich, with the guy sounds like the sky. It's ending on this open vowel. It's kind of a bit optimistic. It's guy, and then drich. there's this landing. You land on the consonants, you know, you don't just land on the consonants, you're kind of sliding on the consonants. So enough of that anecdote, and on to the next poem. And I'm now going to read something just to ring the changes a bit for anybody who's beginning to get the hang of Scots. I'm going to move on to Spanish. And we have the editor of Interpret magazine with us, I think still James Appleby. And I have a poem here which I wrote in Spanish. I don't want to boast too much because I had a lot of help from my Spanish teachers with the language. I will read the Spanish just so you get the sound of it, and then I'll read the translation so you can understand. And this is called Como pez en el agua, or Like a Fish in Water. And it's about my strange experience when I became a grandfather of looking both ways, thinking more and more about my own grandparents once I was a grandfather. And it's like looking two ways, upriver and downriver. Como pez en el agua. Es que soy nieto y abuelo, soy el salmón que, saltando, viejo y cansado, nunca vuelve al nacimiento. Soy origen y destino, el ser y el estaré. Y soy el río del lenguaje desde la catarata, los idiomas de mis bisabuelos hasta el estuario amplio donde mi nieta va a nadar, en la confluencia de herencias, y grito con el anzuelo en la boca, y canto con continuos caraspeos, pero con fluidez y confianza en el flujo turbulento de mis pensamientos, de recuerdos e ilusiones. Soy el salmón moribundo que se cree muy río, balbuceando sus burbujas en todos los idiomas de su poemario macarónico hasta la desembocadura. And I'll have some liquid before the translation. So, like a fish in water. Because I am grandson and grandfather, I'm a leaping salmon, old and tired, who never returns to the source. I am origin and destination, being and becoming, and I'm the torrent of tongues from the waterfall, the speech of my great grandparents to the wide estuary, where my granddaughter will swim in the confluence of cultures. And I scream with a hook in my mouth, and I sing with the frogs in my throat, but fluently swept on by the turbulent flow of my thoughts, of memory and hope. For I am the dying salmon who knows himself only as river, babbling his bubbles from the liquid larynx of my macaronic poemario all the way to the mouth. So thank you to James Appleby, the editor of this interesting magazine, because it's not that easy for a poet based in, an Anglophone poet based in Scotland to get something published when you've written it in Spanish. So I'm ever so grateful. And now, we're only running a little bit late. My final poem is something completely different, and I hope it's amusing. So one of the strange experiences of Zoom events I rapidly discovered was that what people do in their boxes, and then the mystery of what's going on in the black boxes that we see at the bottom of this or the side of the screen. So there was an expression which was a sort of 1950s hip phrase called "be there or be square." And I recall this from the 60s and the 70s when you sort of saw a poster for a music event, "Be there or be square." So this poem is called "Be There and Be Square." In gallery view, Camilla reclines on a radiator. Rebecca reads a text. Dave is stirring something, stewing. Martin falls back in the folds of a soft settee. Kevin's attentive, he's taking full notes. Daisy drifts dreamily into the distance. Mary's obscured by the deep of the dusk. Someone off screen is calling to Cynthia. Gemma has gone. Check out her cute curtains. Camilla caresses a cat at the radiator. Could say Juliet, but in this case, in this version, Camilla caresses a cat at the radiator. Dave's now assembling his dinner. Callum blows smoke at the webcam. Mia drinks tea from a giant green mug. Jane's dog wants in and wants out again. It won't make up its mind. Half of Jock's wife quaffs a Chianti stage left of his quadrangle. Camilla's now drinking too. She had a bottle, it came up from under the radiator. I worry I'm looking too much at Camilla. Is she watching me? Are they all watching me? I peep at the voyeurs in gallery 2, the quad squad in hiding in all their black boxes. Is anyone there? At last it's all over. We're all clapping silently, all except Gemma's blue curtains and the pot on Dave's worktop, and Kazimir Malevich in the black square. But Dave's in the chat saying, sorry, he says it's a vegetable curry. We all join the chat now, effusive. Thanks, Jock, and thanks, Lenny. Thanks, Janice, for making this happen. Thanks, Donal, and thanks all the rest. A night to remember, the best. And the beauty of this poem is every time I read it, of course, I'm able to sort of change the names a little bit to customize it for the event. But, so thank you again, everybody, for coming along this evening. It's been very enjoyable for me, and I hope it has for you as well.